Imagine this. You go through your day, pretty sure you haven't done anything wrong, but then bam, you find out you're actually guilty. Not because you meant to mess up, but just because you didn't know something or maybe didn't act when you should have.
Yeah, it sounds, well, baffling, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You really be on the hook for something you weren't even aware of?
It really challenges how we usually think about intent,
Yeah.
like it needing to mean to do wrong.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But this whole idea, it's exactly what we find laid out with surprising detail in Leviticus chapter 5.
And that's our deep dive for today, Leviticus 5. We're going to try and unpack what this ancient text is telling us about these, well, unintentional sins, how you could become guilty without realizing it, and what the path back looked like, the atonement, the forgiveness.
It's a system that grapples with more than just deliberate rebellion. It
Yeah.
gets into the nitty-gritty of human error and ritual states.
Right. So the chapter, it really throws us into these scenarios where guilt pops up, even if the person was totally clueless at first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It doesn't waste time getting to the tricky stuff.
Okay, let's break down this unintentional guilt idea. The first case seems a bit more straightforward, maybe. It talks about hearing a public charge, like a call for witnesses.
Right. About something someone saw or learned.
And if you know something, but you just don't speak up, don't testify. Well, the text says you will be held responsible.
Yeah, that one feels more like a sin of omission, where you are aware but fail to act. Pretty clear responsibility there.
But then it takes a sharp turn, right, into these situations where guilt is tied directly to, well, being unaware.
It does, and this is where it gets really interesting. The concept of touching something ceremonially unclean. Carcasses of unclean animals, wild ones, livestock, even little ground creatures.
So you could just, accidentally brush against a dead, unclean animal you didn't even notice.
That's the scenario. The text says, even though he is unaware of it, he has become unclean and is guilty. That sounds harsh.
It does. But is there a catch?
There is. And it's crucial. It adds, when he learns of it. That's when the actionable guilt seems to click in.
Ah, okay. So the uncleanness happens unknowingly, maybe instantly. But the guilt that requires you to do something about it, that's triggered by finding out.
Precisely. The knowledge activates the responsibility. And it's the same basic idea with touching human uncleanness. Could be various things mentioned elsewhere in Leviticus.
So same deal. You touch it, maybe don't realize it.
Even though he is unaware of it, and then boom, when he learns of it, he will be guilty.
Okay, so this isn't just about moral failure in the way we might think. It's about a state of being unclean, which needs fixing once you know about it, regardless of intention.
Exactly. It suggests uncleanness is seen as this sort of objective condition, incompatible with God's holiness, especially near the sanctuary. It has to be addressed.
It really frames impurity differently, doesn't it? Less about bad thoughts, more about, well, contact and condition.
It does. And then there's the fourth scenario in this group. Oaths, rash promises.
Right. It says if someone thoughtlessly takes an oath to do anything, whether good or evil, like just blurting something out without thinking.
Yeah. In any matter one might carelessly swear about, and again, even though he is unaware of it at the time, maybe doesn't grasp the full weight of it.
Let me guess. When he learns of it.
He will be guilty. You got it. It underscores the power of your word, even casually spoken, realizing the commitment brings accountability.
So the common thread, the big takeaway from these first scenarios, is that guilt that needs dealing with crystallizes when you find out about the unintentional mistake or the state you're in.
That's the pattern, definitely.
Yeah.
Discovery triggers the process.
Okay, so you found out, you realize, oops, I touched that unclean thing, or man, I made that oath and didn't realize. What now? Does the chapter just say too bad?
No, not at all. It immediately lays out the next steps.
Yeah.
There's a path forward.
Which starts with
Confession. When anyone is guilty in any of these ways, he must confess in what way he has sinned. You have to own it, basically. Acknowledge what happened.
Okay, confession first. That makes sense. Then what?
Then comes the offering,
Yeah.
a penalty, but also the means of atonement. For these situations, the standard sin offering is specified. A female lamb or goat from the flock.
A female animal. Interesting. And the priest handles it.
Yes, the person brings it. The priest performs the ritual to make atonement for the sin.
But what if someone's really poor? A lamb or a goat, that's not nothing.
And the system accounts for that. This is where it gets really quite practical and, you could say, compassionate. There's a tiered system based on what you can afford.
Okay, so if you can't manage a lamb or goat.
Provision number 1, 2 doves or 2 young pigeons. cheaper, more accessible.
2 birds. What happens with them?
One is specifically for the sin offering, the other's for a burnt offering. And the procedure for the sin offering bird is, well, it's very specific.
How so?
The priest takes the bird for the sin offering, wrings its head from its neck, but listen to this, not severing it completely.
Not completely, huh? What?
It's debated, but it seems to distinguish it ritually, maybe focusing on the blood, the life force, without the total consumption of a burnt offering. Then some blood is sprinkled on the altar side, the rest drained at the base. That's the sin offering part.
Wow. Very particular actions. And the second bird?
That one's offered as a burnt offering, following the usual rules for that. And after all this, the result is the same. The priest makes atonement, and the person will be forgiven.
Okay, birds if you can't afford a lamb. But what if even birds are too much?
There's one more level.
Yeah.
For the truly impoverished.
What's the absolute minimum?
1/10 of an ephah of fine flour. Just simple flour. But again, with crucial restrictions.
Restrictions on flour, like what?
He must not put oil or incense on it. And the reason given is explicit. Because it is a sin offering.
No oil, no incense. Why exclude those? They seem common in other offerings.
Exactly. Oil and incense often symbolize joy, blessing, a pleasing aroma. Excluding them here really strips it down. It emphasizes this is purely about dealing with the sin, the impurity. No frills, just the bare necessity of acknowledging the guilt.
So it's a stark offering reflecting the situation. How is it used?
The priest takes a handful, a memorial portion, burns that on the altar along with the other fire offerings happening. That handful represents the whole.
And even with just flour, the outcome is
The same. In this way, the priest will make atonement for him for any of these sins he has committed, and he will be forgiven. It works. And interestingly, the rest of the flour belongs to the priest, like with other grain offerings.
So for this whole first group, guilt triggered by learning about an unaware act or state, it's confess, bring a sin offering you can afford, lamb, birds, or flour, follow the specific ritual, priest makes atonement, you're forgiven. Got it.
That covers that set. But then the chapter shifts gears a bit. It introduces a different type of offering for other kinds of unintentional wrongs. It's called the guilt offering.
The guilt offering. Okay, how's that different from the sin offering we just talked about? What kind of things require this guilt offering?
It seems to deal more with violations involving sacred things or God's specific commands, even if you didn't know the command. Things that might involve a sense of debt or trespass against the holy, requiring not just cleansing, but also like making amends.
So less about general impurity from contact, more about maybe misusing something holy or breaking a divine rule, even by accident.
That seems to be the thrust. The first scenario needing a guilt offering is when someone commits a violation and sins unintentionally in regard to any of the Lord's holy things.
Holy things. What might that include? Like temple property, tithes, maybe?
Could be things like that. Misappropriating something consecrated, maybe not giving the required sacred portions, accidentally benefiting from something that belongs solely to the sanctuary or the priests.
And the offering for that is?
A guilt offering, specifically a ram, a male sheep from the flock, one without defect. And it even mentions assessing its proper value in silver according to the sanctuary shekel. So a valuable animal.
A ram. Okay, but is that it? Just the ram?
No, and here's the really big difference from the sin offerings. Restitution is mandatory.
Restitution, meaning you have to pay something back.
Exactly. The person must make restitution for what he has failed to do in regard to the holy things, and critically, add 1/5 of the value to that, so a 20% penalty, and give it all to the priest.
Wow, so pay back the value of the holy thing you misused or withheld, plus a 20% fine, and bring the ram. That's significant.
It really underscores the seriousness of infringing on the sacred. You have to make it right financially, plus the sacrifice. Only after both the restitution and the ram offering does the priest make atonement, leading to forgiveness.
Makes sense. It's about repairing the breach with the holy. Is there another case for the guilt offering?
Yes, one more. And this one is maybe the most striking example of guilt without awareness.
Okay, what is it?
If a person sins and does what is forbidden in any of the Lord's commands, even though he does not know it.
Wait, forbidden by God's commands, but you didn't know it was commanded or forbidden?
That's exactly what it says. And the text pulls no punches. He is guilty and will be held responsible.
So ignorance of God's law is explicitly not an excuse here. You're still considered guilty if you broke it, even unknowingly.
It implies this objective standard of divine law. It exists and has force, whether you're aware of every detail or not. Breaking it incurs guilt.
That's quite a concept. What's the offering in that case? Is restitution involved there too?
The offering is the same ram for a guilt offering, a ram from the flock, one without defect and of the proper value. But significantly, there's no mention of the extra 20% restitution here.
Ah, okay. So the restitution seems tied specifically to the violation of holy things where there was a tangible loss or misuse. Breaking an unknown command requires the ram, but not the extra payment.
That seems right. The focus is on the ram as the guilt offering to atone for the unintentional transgression against the command itself. And again, the priest makes atonement, and he will be forgiven. The text explicitly calls it a guilt offering because the person has been guilty of wrongdoing against the Lord.
Okay, let's try and pull these threads together then. Leviticus 5 paints this really detailed picture.
It really does. Starts with that, maybe for us, counterintuitive idea. Guilt from things you didn't even know you did, or states you were unaware of.
Right. Failing to testify when you knew something, accidentally touching uncleanness, making a thoughtless oath, guilt that activates when you learn about it.
And for those, the path is confess, then bring a sin offering scaled to your means. Lamb, goat, birds, or even just that specific flour preparation.
Yeah, those rituals are so specific, aren't they? The bird's neck not quite severed, the flower with no oil or incense. Every detail seems loaded with meaning about sin and purification.
Definitely. Then you have the other category. Unintentional sins against holy things or unknown commands. That required the guilt offering, the ram.
And crucially, for the holy things violation, you need that restitution plus the 20% penalty. Making financial amends is part of it.
Right. It's about setting things right with the sacred realm in a very tangible way.
But across all these different scenarios, different offerings, different rituals, the end point is consistent.
The priest makes atonement, and the result, stated over and over, is forgiveness. The person will be forgiven.
It's a system designed to handle the reality of human fallibility, even when there's no malice, no intent. It acknowledges we can mess up without meaning to.
And it underlines how seriously things like ritual purity, spoken oaths, divine commands, and the sanctity of holy things were taken. It shows how, from this perspective, it was easy to fall short, even accidentally. But crucially, it also provides these clear pathways back.
But pathways that are even adjusted based on your ability to pay. There's a kind of practical mercy built into the penalty system itself.
There is. It ensures the possibility of atonement isn't restricted only to the wealthy.
So thinking about this whole chapter, this deep focus on guilt from unawareness, the need for confession once you know, and this intricate system of offerings, what does that really tell us about how responsibility worked in this ancient context? And what does it suggest about the path to restoration? It makes you ponder, doesn't it? How much weight does objective adherence carry versus subjective intent? And what kind of society emerges when there's such a clear, albeit demanding, process for dealing with even unknown errors?